Sorry, I missed one important point, which is they are stateful, which means if, for example, you're allowing an inbound traffic, for example, ping, right? So we looked at an example there. So I'm allowing um, 0.0.0/0, so which means I'm allowing anybody on the internet to ping this machine. So anybody can reach this machine and ping. But I don't have to explicitly add another rule for outbound to allow the traffic back to the user. So unless the user sees the ping result on their screen, they don't know whether they are able to ping or not, right? So it has to be inbound and outbound. The security groups does not have to be defined both ways. So if you define something one way, either inbound or an outbound, the other direction is automatically allowed. That's a very important thing to remember, particularly from a security front. And a lot of troubleshooting usually end up here where we either allowed or didn't allow at this level. So that's why they are called stateful. I think you can allow a variety of traffic in there. So as you can see, the whole range of protocols that you can use. Let's see. So you asked about the UDP, right?
Yes.
So again, by using this, you are, in theory, allowing a two-way traffic here at this point for a UDP. However, it's up to the participant outside to decide whether they want to communicate back to the EC2 instance. By using the security group, you are actually opening up the door for them. If they want to, they can connect and do stuff. And they are allowed to respond to the traffic, if you like. So that's why you have more refined controls up here. So I guess it depends on the situation, but in general, so you would create depending upon your DR need. For example, if you're trying to have a database replication, for example, you would create a separate VPC for it. You would have a subnet where you have a replica of the database. And depending upon if it is a two-way sync required, then you set up your security group and NACL restrictions accordingly. And you would allow the connection and traffic to flow between them. And AWS maintains, so these VPCs are, again, custom VPCs, right? So in terms of availability, you have these across different availability zones. So when you create a subnet, the good practice is to usually create across multiple subnets for availability purposes. For our example, we're just creating in one place, but the good practice, as you asked for, is to create in multiple places. And by default, the availability aspect of AWS will take care of if one availability zone goes down. And again, you can have region to region replication as well, depending on if your data is allowed to traverse through different regions.
In terms of best practices, I can just add a couple of points here, like,
Sure.
categorize your security groups. It's like, it's good to have DB groups separately, web server connection ports in one separate group, the media ones, third-party connections separately. The other one is use proper naming conventions for your security groups. So that actually helps a lot as well. Attach policies to group rather than individual users. Don't open ports to 000 unless it's like specifically required to do so. So some of the policies we actually follow within the company. That's the base thing.
I think you touched all the good points there, Kaushal. So naming convention, we can't stress enough. I've worked in places where it's a complete mess, where nobody has got a clue of what these names represent and how this. So every time we have to click and look at the specific configuration. It's very difficult if we don't get it at the beginning. It can very easily get out of hands. Absolutely. Especially the documentation nature of the cloud is it's very changing environment, right? Most of them, so it's not typically documented like a traditional infrastructure, at least in the experience I have seen. So with the lack of a solid documentation, it can become a nightmare to trace back if things goes wrong or you want to troubleshoot something.
Absolutely. There is this facility within AWS. It's AWS VPC flow logs.
Mm-hmm.
It enables, I think it's the flow that can capture both the accept and reject entries. So as a solution architect, it's actually good to visit this regularly in order to actually see and can be scanned to detect problems as well, like abnormal activities and things like that. So we regularly use those as well now.
Correct. So that's one of the topics we would be touching in the coming weeks. So that's one of a key factor to look for from a monitoring perspective. You can have something
Initially,
like a KINESIS or some other automation processing platforms to, analyze and assess these logs. And there are third-party tools like, Sumo Logic and stuff like that, which are cloud-based SIEMs, which can look at things for you, alert on things that you need to worry about or focus on.